Hey, Mark here. I have an impossibly cool giveaway for you. I have 5 digital copies of Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1 up for grabs. And if you'd like a copy, just message me. Be like, hey, Mark, I would like a copy of Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1 because it's a fun movie. There's a train fight. Tom Cruise jumps off a cliff. Beautiful. So yeah, if you'd like a copy, just message me and say, hey, Mark, I would like a copy. And thank you for listening. I appreciate it. Also, if you listen to this podcast, send me a message. Say hi. Shoot me a message. Like, are there any movies you want to hear? Do you have any questions? Let me know. I would love to hear from you. So yeah, get Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1 on digital today. Tom Cruise stars in the film critics are calling the biggest and best action movie of the year. Buy Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1 on digital today and go behind the scenes with incredible bonus content. Available at participating retailers, rated PG-13 from Paramount Pictures. Hello and welcome to Movies, Films, and Flicks. I am Mark Hoffmeyer, and joining me is a very brave man. It's John Leavengood.
Okay, brave man, you make me wonder what I wandered into today.
I mean, I'm having you explain the entire Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. Like, basically, we've talked a lot about A Nightmare on Elm Street. You and I both love 3, and we love 4, and we love 5, and we love 1, and 2's a lot of fun. I love New Nightmare. Actually, we're just fans of the franchise. You should go back and listen to our episodes because we did the 3, 4, and 5 series, and I really enjoyed doing that. And it made me realize how much I love 3, and I'm working on an assignment now where I'm watching 3 again. So I was like, I think John would be good to explain the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. The point here is just to knock it out. And so John, just pretend that you and I met on the world's longest elevator. It's just you and I going to the top, and you and I start chatting about horror movies. And you're like, yeah, I'm John's Horror Corner. I'm like, known worldwide. I'm like, that's awesome. I've heard about you. And I was like, you're like, hey man, and recommend anything? And you're like, well, have you seen the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise? And I'm like, no, but can you do a whole breakdown? Cause I just want to know. I like to know movies before I go into it. So can you break down the entire franchise for me? So when I leave this elevator, I'm like, oh, I got it.
I'm tempted to actually do this a little less conventionally. And instead of going from what happens in the first movie to how it evolves in the second movie and how it evolves in the third movie and then what happens in the fourth movie. I feel like if I'm trying to sell you on this franchise, I want to address the franchise first and then let you pick at it afterwards. And
okay.
So, Freddy Krueger is A Nightmare on Elm Street. That's the take home, right? It's not a particular hero. It's just Freddy Krueger is this dream demon. And he's made from an angry, evil soul of a man who was essentially murdered in vigilante justice because in life he was a child molester and child murderer. But like a rage-filled J-horror grudge ghost, he comes back with powers that he really never deserved to have to exact revenge upon people who really never deserved it. And in this case, they are generation after generation or movie after movie of Elm Street kids. And this all starts with a simple visual of a creepy nightmare in an uncomfortable setting with uncomfortable sounds. And with the visuals we get in these boiler room scenes, you even imagine the stagnant water steaming smells. You see a boogeyman, a rattled teenager, and they wake up with a real-life memento of a scar that they got in this dream, and off they go chatting with their friends to make a movie about it, because what happens to them in these dreams happens to them in reality. And so if they die in that dream, they die in the reality. And again, this is something we're going to hear movie after movie after movie. This is the wash, rinse, repeat cycle of these films. And this is always our act one. It's the crux of the story, the reignition of the story that some teen like patient zero is infected, and they inform their classmates at, I don't remember, Elm Street High, Springwood High, and who are subsequently exposed and infected by the knowledge of Freddy's existence. And with this knowledge, they start to die off in their dreams and in real life, one by one, as the diminishing survivors need to figure out how to defeat him, which invariably means pulling him from the dream world where this evil manifestation has all the power into reality where he's vulnerable. Now, this takes place in the 80s mostly, most of this franchise, and that means all the tropes, or if you grew up in that time frame, all the realities of absentee, overworked, overstressed, over self-medicated parents are typically linked to divorce, child neglect, basically leaving their kids to fend on their own like feral creatures, and then they're trying to self-medicate, or I'm sorry, to medicate these teens' problems that they diagnose as almost disruptive adolescence, which usually comes with the kids refusing to sleep. And so the parents are trying to sneak them sleeping pills or force them to sleep or basically Baker Act them into a mental ward to get them to sleep and make them vulnerable. And then this is where Freddy has his great chances. And with each sequel, we find more repeated, perverse, but not necessarily so limit-pushing for the times, themes of sexual assault, sexual harassment, chauvinism, a lot of gross themes. He tries to enter the world via possession in part 2 and eventually via an unwanted birth in part 5, literally like an antichrist. And so as he gets more creative, so get his creative ways of killing the Elm Street teens. I think the pinnacle of this is in part 4, with when the weightlifting teenage girl has the Roach Motel Roach transformation death scene, and it's easily the thing that I love talking about the most in the whole franchise. Dig up GIFs of the Nightmare on Elm Street 4 Roach Motel or weightlifting death scene, and that can probably sell someone alone on watching this franchise. But so as the franchise moves on and his kills get more creative, again, the sexual themes get repeated, Freddy is finding more and more influence over the real world. It's like the movies are trying to make it more interesting, just like the Scream movies always talk about changing the rules when it's a sequel or a trilogy or a franchise or a reboot. In this case, they just need to find new ways to change Freddy's power or give him more power. It's like he's getting better at being a dream demon, and he's better at influencing the real world or influencing people while they're awake. Likewise, we need to find new ways to fight him, so we learn more about his backstory in the form of visions of his nun mother, unfortunately being raped by maniacs in an insane asylum, and she's trying to help people from beyond the grave to prevent her son from being this antichrist-like figure, or simply from killing off all the Elm Street kids. And so as these movies go on, they get more and more over the top. Freddy gets funnier because he's the star. It's not our final girl really that's the star most of the time. Even though they are, that's not what got us to buy the ticket. It's Freddy. So he's become this character and then more of a caricature of himself. And he gets funnier and more slapstick and more ridiculous. He's basking in the craziness of these kills. So from movie 1, we start out very serious and, in air quotes, more grounded for a movie with a dream demon killing kids in their sleep, to something that gets more cartoonish and deliberately tongue-in-cheek all the time. And I think that one of the cool things about this franchise is that Freddy, like the horror genre in general of the 70s and 80s, is not afraid to push limits. He's not afraid to attack handicaps like the hearing impaired, drug addicts, mentally ill, suicide-prone people, wheelchair-bound victims. He'll happily use it against you in cruel style. And worse yet, these deaths will make conveniently look like a suicide for someone who's in a mental institution for trying to commit suicide. This was in part 3. Brutal with the wrist slashing and puppeteering this kid and walking him off the 3rd floor of a mental asylum. In concept, this is so mean. I think this really crescendos its way all the way into Freddy's Dead, where unfortunately I feel like where Icarus flew too high And the franchise feels very much like it slams into a wall with this part 6, just as quickly as it had built wonderful inertia with the story arc in parts 3, 4, and 5, which actually is the only arc that has strongly linked characters across the movies. And then we move on into, well, Wes Craven's New Nightmare, which I think is fantastic, because we're going to say that when we look back at these movies where Freddy is someone who seems to rely on the knowledge of him in order to affect victims and collect souls and gain his power and influence, this seventh movie is a meta movie where there's a movie within the movie where Wes Craven is writing that all this time they've been subduing this ancient evil in reality by making these movies and giving it a name and keeping it captive. And when they stopped making movies, the evil started to truly manifest and affect the world and come for the woman who played Nancy, Heather Langenkamp, and to affect her child and her husband. I think it's a fantastic movie, and it brings Freddy back to his grounded roots of just being evil and cruel, and it takes all the cartoonishness out of him, except for a few antics of special effects in the end. Well, we do have a little hopscotch with Freddy vs. Jason before the remake, and I will say that I love Freddy vs. Jason, but Freddy vs. Jason is to a Freddy movie what Jason Goes to Hell or Jason X is to a Friday the 13th movie, and that is just straight cartoon nonsense land of popcorn roller coaster fun, but it doesn't do anything to really help these franchises. And then when we finally move into the remake, I think that, again, it was trying to get that grounded, mean feel, take away all the humor, go back to the brass tacks. Remake got a lot of bad flack, but that's what remakes do, isn't it? They get bad flack, whether it's from a purist or from someone making a crass comparison from part 1 or the whole franchise to the new one. Frankly, I thought that the remake was pretty good. Not great. But it was worthy enough. It's hard to follow up that franchise with a remake and not give you exactly what you've had all this time and have people be thrilled about it. But I liked its groundedness, the meanness to the story, the meanness to the character, and the removal of strangling someone with your tongue. Or trying to swallow a kid whole with a slack-jawed snake monster version of yourself. And so I don't know. I'm really disappointed that these movies stopped. It felt like they had the inertia to go forever, and I really feel like the only true misstep was Freddy's Dead. And at the time, I got to tell you, everyone thought that Freddy's Dead was going to be awesome, because 1984, 1985, 87, 88, 89, and 91, you had Freddy movies. And other than 91's Freddy's Dead, they were all really good. I don't know. You got to stop me. Ask me a question.
Do you think...
Get me going. But
okay.
This is... I'm very passionate about this.
Do you think the Nose franchise is the most consistent of all the horror franchises? Because, let's say Texas Chainsaw Remake. I mean, a couple good ones, few fun ones. Then we have
remakes, actually, in fact, in that franchise.
There's so many prequels. So then we have, I love Friday the 13th, but those are up and down, but they're still scrappy and fun. There's Halloween, which has 5 separate timelines, and I mean, I like them all, but from what you're saying, it sounds like Nose is the most consistent of all the major horror franchises, with at least, let's say, 7 entries, which puts it in a territory of like Conjuring and, let's do like Nose, Halloween, Child's Play, Paranormal Activity, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Friday the 13th. Is it the most consistent of all of them?
Child's Play follows essentially a straight narrative.
Yeah.
Even though there's some time jumps. They change very much in style after, so part 1 versus parts 2 and 3 versus Bride and Seed. Bride and Seed were their own flavor, and then Curse and Cult were their own flavor, right? But they're still all following the same storyline with links, right? And Paranormal Activity, a lot of hopscotching, but a lot of dot connecting. But I think that Freddy keeps it closer from movie to movie. And especially, again, starting with part 3, which brings back the Nancy character. It's the only time we get Nancy back except for Wes Craven's New Nightmare, the meta sequel, part 7, I'll call it. But yeah, the characters in part 3, 4, and 5 continuously run. And then when we go to Freddy's Dead, well, yeah, we have a total change in cast, but we're still playing off of the fact that Freddy was killed. They make an interesting leap that Freddy's now forgotten. It's almost like some forgotten deity where when they no longer had worshipers, they lost all their power. And again, they play that same theme in Freddy versus Jason. But really, yeah, I think it keeps, the motivations are similar, and Freddy's challenges to find his way back into reality, we'll call it, especially again in Freddy's Dead and Freddy versus Jason, are very similar. And then again, they developed that theme beautifully, arcing to Wes Craven's New Nightmare.
And a quick question.
Freddy 6 just had horrible writing. I don't know what happened.
Jason came out sorry, I interrupted. Sorry. Freddy vs. Jason came out in 2003. That was like a really aggressive time for films with like Cabin Fever, House of a Thousand Corpses. Just a really aggressive the remake of Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It was just super aggressive and very early 2000s. Is it meaner than is it like meaner than the 84 movies, or is it just?
I don't think so. I think it just tried to have more fun with some graphic effects or some graphic themes. I will say that the Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Wrong Turn, although Wrong Turn wasn't a Platinum Dunes, but the Texas Chainsaw Massacre was. And this was a Platinum Dunes, and Friday the 13th remake was Platinum Dunes, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, there were a couple things where, I don't know if in 2003 it made me feel this way when I was 22, but now when I see the passed out girl with her rapist assailant, if you will, both getting stabbed through with a pipe, it's just, I'm more concerned about what happened before the pipe. That scene feels very provocative now, and I don't think it felt as provocative then. I guess we're just more aware.
Got it.
But it's still a mean concept, and a lot of the things that they do, they rip off each other's limbs and stab each other with them, and Freddy does seem to delight in cruelty a little differently, I think, especially against Jason. So that could be. It could be going with that theme. I'm going to say again, though, I thought Freddy versus Jason was a blast. I thought it was super fun.
Yeah, I need to watch it again. I just remember, I just saw a clip of Jason having booze sprayed in his face in a cornfield.
Right, and then he gets lit on fire. And then while he's on fire, he goes around chopping people up. And we all know from a filmmaking perspective, that's a guy in a rigid, super thick suit, clumsily, swinging a machete arm. But for what it is, that scene worked better than I think it deserved to. I just rewatched the more recent half of the Freddy movies just in the last week, getting ready for this, and I was pretty pleased with it. It holds up better than I thought. A lot of the language, though, again, I got to give the trigger warning to anyone who's going to go investigate these movies. There is a lot of language that I guess folks would call problematic today.
And all of them? Oh, yeah. All right. What's your favorite?
Of the movies?
Yeah.
I think it's an easy part 3. Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3. We've talked about it. It's one of the best horror sequels period.
Nice.
I think.
All right.
It's
I'm gonna break character. I think it's my favorite too. I'm not elevator guy anymore. I just watched it again, man, and like 3 gets me because, and we talked about this more in depth during the episode, but these kids, like, they aren't they aren't horny teenagers. They're not, they haven't done anything wrong. They're not knocking on doors that they shouldn't knock on. They didn't kill somebody and try to hide it. They're not smarmy teens who just talk about horror films and they're all meta. They're kids that are like horribly sleep deprived from bad situations, can't sleep, have wild nightmares, and they're in this facility where they keep trying to get put asleep and no one understands them. And the way that Freddy kills Taryn, the way that Freddy kills these people, it's so mean, John. It's like, it's one of the meanest movies I think I've ever seen. But then also you get Nancy back. You have the really good performance from Patricia Arquette. But like when Taryn finds hope and she has her switchblades, which is very 80s, and her mohawk, which is very 80s, and then she just gets killed by an OD. It's brutal, man. It's a brutal.
by an OD she saw coming and looked terrifying.
Yeah,
like it was just.
That's like, that's mean. You know what's crazy? Wes Craven wrote an even meaner draft, but Chuck Russell and Frank Darabont, they kind of wrote it down a little bit, and they even took some kind of crazy visuals out that were too much. So if this movie could have been meaner, I don't think I would have watched it. It's just such a mean movie, man, but it's also well made and it's well acted, and I like all the kids.
Great art from the kids, right? And here's something else. People today, and I'm not, by the way, this isn't me saying you people who are listening who don't get horror the way we get horror. That's not where I'm coming from. But we have been so spoiled for so long with movies that are made because someone had an idea of a really cool death scene or a couple really cool death scenes. And horror movies now are looking for creative, interesting, provocative, funny, ridiculous ways to kill people in death scenes. Now, I'm not saying that in Jason movies they weren't trying, right? Kill them with a spear, an axe, a this, a that, a whatever, an arrow through the bottom of the bed.
Jason Lives has a triple decapitation.
What's that?
Jason Lives has a triple decapitation.
There you go. And then we move forward in time all the way to the Final Destination movies, which are just, a roller coaster delight. Like their whole scenes. A death scene is a scene in an even greater respect. But if you in your life as a horror fan could only watch movies in chronological order, so you can never watch a movie that's older than the last movie that you watched in your whole life, by the time you get to Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3, no horror movie has had 2 death scenes as spectacular as any of the 4 in that movie. This is the first movie, I believe, to truly make spectacles and special thematic scenes out of every death scene. Before that, Freddy wasn't doing it. Before that, no one was doing that. Before that, the greatest creativity was a different kind of weapon or a different kind of gore gag with a weapon. I feel like this is the movie that made this beloved gorehound horror trope. Period. The end. And in a way, that gives it a new special status for me, even if I didn't think all these other things were so wonderful about it. And then it kept doing it. Kept doing it with Freddy's Dead. I'm sorry, that wasn't very good. But,
Rennie Harlan, baby. Rennie Harlan did Dream Master.
Right, kept doing it with Dream Master, kept doing it with Dream Child. Again, they tried it with Freddy's Dead. There are so many things about that movie that didn't work. I'd like to see a documentary just exploring the failure of that movie. But, I mean, Part 3 changed so much for horror movies. And I think Part 3 really showed that once you made a Part 2 or a Part 3, it was okay to really care about your source material still. Mm-hmm. Instead of just recasting a dude in the mask, putting a machete in his hand. And I'm not saying I'm not a fan of the Jason movies, but again, they have some that have good creative turns, but they're just a creative turn. And Part 3, I mean, Picasso's paintbrush to the horror genre for that.
I mean, let's look at this real quick. By Friday the 13th, Part 3, I mean, that's when he's getting his mask. That's when he's in a barn with characters who I believe have nothing to do with characters from number 2. And then you have Halloween 3, which is a completely separate story. And like a lot of genre, Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Yeah, no, I dug it. Like I get the idea, but like this Chainsaw Massacre, you had the first 2. The second one was wildly different from the first one, and the third one wasn't really there. So here's Freddy that brings back Nancy, that brings back her dad, that ties in these kids and like gives her a reason to be there. And it also, it's in a weird way too, man. Like he's like, welcome to prime time. It's such a mean kill. But then he always had a personality, but then now he had the one-liners, but he wasn't a caricature yet because he was so mean. So I think it opened the door a little bit for more one-liners, but also, I mean, okay, so in the first one, right, he hangs people, he sucks people in the bed, does blood explosions. In the second one, he has the pool massacre. Like he goes for it. But in 3, he's cruel. I don't know. There's a cruel, and these kids. Okay, John, you know what's weird? Like if these kids were just like randy teenagers, I don't know. I keep saying randy teenagers. Like you don't.
Because that's such a theme in the genre.
I don't think I would care as much. But these are innocents he's going after, and not only is he going after them, but he's using psychological warfare against them, and it's so mean, dude. But it's also effective, and it hurts, and it sometimes I feel like horror movies should hurt, and this one does. So yeah, I'm with you with 3 being the best.
You know, that's actually something that I really liked about the remake that again got criticized, because the remake was made in 2010 when it was really, I don't know, it was becoming less okay to revel in some of these themes of child molesting, we'll just call it sexually triggering themes between Freddy and his victims on scene, licking them, the things he says to them. Again, the remake made it purely mean, made it purely insidious. And again, 2010, it's no longer the 80s. We don't get to hide through what was okay in the 80s kind of thing. But truly, like, what is horror? Just that word. I mean, I don't want to watch the horror genre where it's afraid of offending or triggering. Horror is inherently often going to be offensive or triggering. And I'm not saying it has to be. Sometimes it's just titillating with gore and fun scares or terrifying scares. But when the genre tiptoes around concepts, you feel it. It's almost like when you can tell that a movie was pulled back from R to PG-13 in concept, and it just doesn't hit the way that it should. And so, Part 3 versus in the remake especially, I think that I'm glad that they were comfortable going where they thought they needed to go, to be honest to the cruelty of a character they wanted to show. And that's fine. And again, I like it. And I like being challenged by films. I think that's impressive at times. It's not always just, someone trying to shock people for the sake of shocking people. Not that there isn't plenty of that in the world.
I think when it pushes buttons and it tintillates and scintillates, I think that, movies like I Saw the Devil or Martyrs or Freddy 3 or Thirst, I think movies that have a genuine story, or Raw or Titan, like movies that have a story and are fully committed and will take you there, I think they're highly successful. I guess I just don't like it when movies are, I don't know, like those Terrifier movies, 1 and 2. They just, like, Art the Clown is just cruel for cruel's sakes. There's nothing to glean from those movies other than, hey, look at these special effects and look how cruel this person is. Like, I don't like that.
I love those movies, but I love them for exactly what you just said.
Yeah, I get it, but I just don't like it. I don't like it. Like, I feel like the guy's legitimately just pushing buttons rather than investing. Like, I Saw the Devil is The Wailing. Those are emotional journeys that feature some really gnarly moments, but they build, right? And they take care, and they, like, I don't know, man. Like, I guess when we're talking about pushing buttons, I like having my buttons pushed, but when there's a good story, when there's art to it. I just don't like pushing buttons, like, you know, an elf when he hits every single button in the elevator. Right. I don't like that. I like it when there's a rhyme or reason to it. And with 3, I think there is a rhyme or reason to it. Like, I think the meanness in 3 pays dividends. And no, I mean, it's just a strong film. So no, this is cool, John. It's, yeah, no, no, real quick before we get out here.
I'll let another look. Wait, when you said it, by the way, when you push buttons like that and we show such a horrible character doing such horrible things to people, it can change the catharsis at the end too. Sometimes we're satisfied because we were invested in these characters, or, oh gosh, whereas with this, it is a relief when Freddy is defeated.
Yeah.
It's not just a high five victory point or the typical outcome of a final girl. It's a relief that evil was quelled.
Well, that's a good point. You want him gone, really, and when he's gone, yeah.
Whereas in a couple other Freddy movies where he's not as insidious, like in Part 4, not nearly as insidious, not nearly. He's still, you know, sexually problematic, if you will, but it's not the same flavor because he's getting sillier. And so when he dies in that, it's just like, oh man, they got Freddy, whatever. We'll see him in Part 5, you know, that rascal.
Yeah. He should not be that rascal, right? He should not be that rascal. I don't know if you think that, but.
No, but Part 4 is where he started. Just started to become that rascal, right? But yeah, you know, again, they're making his deaths more and more spectacular as well. The way in which he dies has to have a greater steeped meaning in each movie. You know, in the first movie, we just pull him to reality and we can kill him.
Hit him in the balls with a sledgehammer.
Right. Great movie. Don't get me wrong, but it was that simple. Part 2, basically the same, a little more highbrow in the concepts of the movie. But yeah, Part 3, we're starting to play a little bit. Part 4, we're literally using the soul power of our dead friends against Freddy. Part 5, the souls inside of him are tearing him apart. You know, like they get more spectacular.
Yeah, and less, and like it's not a relief anymore. You're more, you know, like at the end of 5, you're like, hey, that's pretty cool special effects. Like that's what goes through your mind, not like, oh, thank goodness this guy's dead.
Pointing at the screen as Freddy is being destroyed. They want you to point at the screen and say, that's happening there. Look at that cool effect. That's what they want. Exactly. Instead of having to be awestruck at holy crap. And this movie just happened to me.
One thing too is the first Nightmare on Elm Street, they give you the backstory of him, but they don't try to make him a relatable figure or a sad figure. Doesn't the remake? So I watched it once. The remake tries to make you think that maybe he was innocent, but he's not. And that just seemed like a total waste of time for me because like everyone knows he's not innocent. You're not going to make Freddy an innocent. And it just felt like a very, what's the word? Just, hey, we're going to try something. But it never worked for me because I knew it was just a filler, if that makes sense.
Right. So in that, it was like the filmmakers deliberately trying to pull a fast one on the viewers.
Yeah.
Because in the movie, they do, in fact, they build up the story. When he's being chased down, they make it seem like he's terrified, like he could be innocent. I suppose if you were a terrified child molester, though, you'd still just be terrified that they were coming to kill you. And, you know, all the angry vigilante parents. But, and then the kids are starting to investigate. They're learning more about Freddy. They're kind of being directed a bit by Freddy, too, to learn more about him. And the kids begin to think, oh my gosh, he's come to get us because we lied because we said things that weren't true. But towards the end, you actually learn that, in fact, he was killing and molesting these kids. And then the grown-up kids even realize, no, he's not punishing us because we lied. He's punishing us because we told the truth and he got caught. Mm-hmm. So they did reveal very cleanly that no, he is insidious and he did deserve it. But they let you wonder for an hour of that movie if he's innocent. And that is an interesting strategy, I guess, to manipulate your audience. I thought back on that even as I was recently rewatching, because I was thinking the same thing, like, oh, I didn't remember he was innocent in this. And then it's like you're thinking that this whole time, and then they pull the veil. It's like, oh, he's not innocent. He's a piece of shit. Okay. Why did you play it that way?
Right. And you knew it was coming. The whole movie wasn't going to be him innocent coming back. Like, you're not going to do that. So it's like, come on, guys. Like, you know what, though? I guess I do appreciate that they tried something different. So it will get points. It's not a carbon copy remake. But it's still, you're like, guys, we know what you're going to do. Like, that's the only problem of it. But, you know, like, you tried something new. So, like, I guess you just got to give it points for trying, right? I don't know if I fundamentally like the idea, but I do like that at least they said, hey, let's swing, right? Like, we're gonna pull the bat. We're gonna, you know, we're not gonna swing we're gonna pretend to swing. We're gonna swing, but then we're gonna pull the bat. But at least they did that.
What's most morally ambiguous actually about that remake is that as we're shown this and we're seeing him terrified as he's being hunted down, we later learn that when the parents hunted him down and killed him, they didn't necessarily have such compelling proof of his actions. And in this movie, he had never killed any kids.
Oh.
So in this movie, he never killed any kids. Some kids came home with marks on their bodies that the parents decided were from him. The kids identified a special place where this happened that they described as a cave, which we do discover later in the movie, but that the parents never found. And so the parents actually did, in fact, hunt him down without what we'll call like the true knowledge. Whereas in the other movies, the original, it's like it's just known. He was doing it. He was killing kids. We had to take it into our own hands. In this, it was presumed. And so that's the other thing is that, so even though you don't normally think about the Act 1 when you're done with Act 3 so much, that's an interesting thing. I don't know if that was meant to be titillating in a hindsight judgment of the parents differently than, again, in the past source material. I don't know. Whatever they did, it was thoughtful. They put a lot of thought into how they reapproached this Freddy Krueger and his story and the execution of the discovery of that story by the current suffering, murdered generation of kids. It's funny. I never thought as much about that movie originally, and I think a lot more highly of it now.
Last question. If it came out in 2005, would people have liked it more? Because
people liked it more.
Because think about it, right? Like Texas Chainsaw Massacre was 2003. And then, you know, so basically what we had was in 2009, you had Dark Castle with like House on Haunted Hill. The Haunting came out. That wasn't them. But then you had 2001 with The Ring. And then you had 2003 Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So that was followed up by The Grudge. And then that was followed up by...
We had Wrong Turn earlier then too.
But like all the remakes, right? Like, so all the remakes happened. And then just remake. You know, the Beautiful Crazies remake was in 2010. F13 was in, 2009? That wasn't universally beloved. It had one of the second biggest weekend drops ever. Just so many, like, I had the data, but there's tons of remakes, horror remakes specifically, like, more so than normal. I mean, remakes are a fact of life, but there was more than normal. And this came out towards the tail end of it. So I think
My Bloody Valentine's right with it too, I think.
And I think, I distinctly remember kind of feeling a little burnt out by all the remakes because they didn't feel necessary. You follow a wave, right? And you make money. So they're necessary in a business expense. But I just was kind of tired of them. And I think audiences were too. And so do you think if this came out 5 years earlier, when remakes were still fresh, or, I mean, like I said, there's always been horror remakes, Invasion of the Body Snatchers, this the thing, like
in the new wave,
the new wave, the 2000s,
too,
new
wave of movies. It might have fit better in a 2003 to 2005 zone.
Fit like with Inside and Frontiers and stuff, and like.
Well, and again, you said 2003 Texas Chainsaw, but 2006 was the next one, The Beginning.
Yeah.
And so like both very mean.
Devil's Rejects was 05, so I think it would have felt more at home then rather than when it was released. Because this is, I think, Paranormal Activity had come out. I think that there was a little bit of a, Scream 4 was already making fun of remakes. So I think it just came out 5 years too late.
That could be. That could be. Timing matters.
Yeah. Well, dude, this was great. This was fun.
Yeah, I got to tell you, it was really interesting too. In 2 back-to-back days, starting with Freddy's Dead, and then doing Wes Craven's New Nightmare, Freddy vs. Jason, and the remake, as opposed to what I would typically do around, say, early October. And that's start a horror franchise and then kind of stop when it loses its steam, like do a 1 through 4 or a 1 through 5.
Man, I love Wes Craven's New Nightmare. I just don't understand how he has that nice palace with fountains. And he has a water slide, that demon, which I kind of love. Like, did the demon come, like, is it that he created it in its mind? Like, where's this fountain? Like, where's this fire? Like, who? I don't know. I just love that there's a water park that leads to a demon's house. All right, man. Well, hey, this was awesome. Thank you for joining me. Thank you giving me your insights on this franchise, because I know how much you love it. And I just like talking Nightmare on Elm Street. Okay, so my favorite I love the Friday the 13th franchise the most. I love the Insidious franchise a lot. The Freddy franchise keeps me at a distance because it can be so mean. I think you can watch Friday the 13th and never feel drained or empty or relieved. They're just fodder films. And, maybe that's not good. I mean, I'm not talking skill level, right? I'm not talking about what's better. I just think the material of Nightmare on Elm Street keeps me from watching it a lot. So, for me, I'm all about Insidious. I'm all about, Friday the 13th. They just feel less heavy to me and thus more rewatchable. And I'm not comparing quality, but it's still a franchise that I admire pound for pound. I think it has the most, The Conjuring has so many different worlds. It's hard to chow them all together. But pound for pound, I think it has the strongest entries. Friday the 13th. Oh no, A Nightmare on Elm Street has the strongest entries, like pound for pound, of any horror franchise.
There's something. One other interesting thing too is that I feel like the final girls in Freddy movies, although they all start out, no, they don't start out like typical. So they're not like Jamie Lee Curtis, who starts scrapping and becomes a survivor. They Rambo up. They are, they're trying to make a plan. They're trying to be constructive. They're usually leading in trying to make people aware and trying to save people and trying to stop this evil and trying to figure it out. And then they are the people who do it, in fact, in the end. So the final girls in the Freddy movies, and I didn't put much thought into this before I opened my mouth, but I feel like the final girls in the Freddy movies have the most significant and capable roles versus final girls in other horror franchises. It's almost like they're the Ellen Ripleys of the final girls in franchises.
Yeah, there's a lot more focus on them, right? Because I think Friday the 13th has some really strong final girls, but they're not the focus of the movie. They're just sort of the last one alive, and they fight back. Like, they'll use mind games against Jason, or Trish will just mutilate, like she'll hang him, chop him up, stab him in the head, but she's not the main focus because there's so many characters. But in this one, you're spending time with Nancy, you're spending time with Kristen, like you're in the second film, what's his name? Like you're spending time with him. So I think you're living, and even Freddy vs. Jason, she's a major part of it. So I think they get a stronger role. And I think my favorite shot of Nightmare on Elm Street is when Kristen's being eaten alive by Freddy Snake, and Nancy comes in, stabs it in the eye with a piece of glass, pulls Kristen behind her and just holds the glass up like come at me. Like it's a strong moment, and I like both of them a lot. So I think that's probably one of my favorite visuals from the franchise. But yeah, no, I think you're right, John. Like aside from maybe Scream, they probably spend the most time with an individual character.
But of course, Scream, also Wes Craven property.
Yeah.
I mean, so
yeah.
It's the same person using what he knows, and that is, again, these stronger, more calculating, more constructive, more mission-oriented. I don't know how to put it. They don't just happen to kill the bad guy while they're trying to survive. They are trying to figure out what's going on.
Yeah. Like, yeah, no, I love it. Like, and also Nancy Home Alone's before Kevin McAllister did. I just want to put that out there.
Right. Nancy Home Alone's first, and she does it well.
That sledgehammer. No, it's a good, and yeah, I think, no, I do think if someone asked me what's the most consistent, I would have to say Nightmare on Elm Street. I don't think there's another answer. And I guess, 3 through 5 is a lot of fun. Like it's taut. And I know it changes, Freddy changes, but like so does horror. So I mean, you just got to ride that wave. But no, cool. I like it, John. John, how would you rank? I want to get your ranking real quick before we get out here. Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, Halloween, Child's Play, and Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise. So those 5.
Right. So Noe's is going to be on top. So then you said TCM, Friday the 13th, Child's Play, and what else?
Halloween.
Okay. All right. Okay. So Noise is on top no matter what metric I'm using. It doesn't matter. If I'm using this for my excitement to do a franchise rewatch, all the way through, it's probably next going to be, boy, TCM has a couple duds in there, but it's got great source material. I think I would put Child's Play second, actually.
Yeah.
Again, my judgment is based on my willingness to do a full franchise rewatch. Then, even though, no joke, it's not my favorite of the remaining 3 franchises, I'm going to say Halloween. I like the plot turns that Halloween makes, and even with its different timelines, I find that interesting. I think that the Halloween 4-5 arc is interesting, and then I think the H2O Resurrection arc is interesting. So, yeah, then I put Halloween, and then I think it's going to be Texas Chainsaw and then Friday the 13th.
Oh, wow.
Bottom. It doesn't mean I don't like my Friday the 13th movies, right? In fact, well, I got to tell you, once you get to like your Freddy versus Jason, your Jason X, and your Jason Goes to Hell, I kind of love that schlock at the end.
Dude, I loved
all those effects.
Okay, last thing before we get out of here.
Okay,
I know I keep dragging you into it, but we'll get done soon. Let's do a real quick draft, and let's just draft our favorite horror sequels.
Oh, just sequels.
Yeah, just sequels.
Okay.
So I'll let you go first.
You're just dropping this on me too.
I mean,
so.
I'll let you have a Nightmare on Elm Street 3. You can have it.
Let's exclude it. Let's exclude Nightmare on Elm Street 3.
Let's go big hitters. Let's do it. Like, let's go big hitters. If you want to exclude that one, we can. But like, I'd be down for like a big hitter one.
I'm gonna say, okay, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2.
Ooh.
I love the slapstick nonsense of that batshit crazy sequel.
But same. I just watched it recently for an episode with Johnny Numb about chainsaws, and it made me really appreciate it. Also, the documentary about Canon Films made me like it more because Toby Hooper was supposed to make a Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie, and he made that, and they were not happy with him. So I'm just gonna go with Jason X, man. I don't care. I didn't like it for 15, 16, 17 years, and now I love it. I finally got on its wavelength, and I adore it. So I'm going Jason X.
I was gonna pick that, but my backup to that is Jason Goes to Hell.
I'm gonna go Insidious 2 then, because
Insidious 2.
No movie has that movie stressed me out. I was leaving the theater, looking at Megan, and my heart was pounding, and I was like, that was really stressful. It hurt. So yeah, I'm gonna go Insidious 2.
I'm gonna go Child's Play 2.
Oh, that one's fun.
You know what? Because it always sticks with me so well too. Is that opening sequence of putting the doll back together?
Oh yeah, idiots. And I love how in the third one they melt it and then it's in the batch. So then when they start making toys again, it's still lingering around.
That felt like more of a reach to me. With right, it's really like maybe it's divided up amongst a whole bunch of other Chucky dolls or something.
Oh man, yeah. But yeah, no, good pull. I'm gonna do H2O, just because I love H2O. It's like 90 minutes. It's Michael Myers drives across country. I love it. All right, what's your next one?
I'm gonna go Poltergeist 2.
Ooh.
Kane, that creepy old man singing that old dead minister. Oh, so good. And Craig T. Nelson vomits that monster.
I've never watched it, so I might have to do it now.
Poltergeist 2?
No, never watched Poltergeist 2.
Dude.
It's on the list.
That's 3 dudes.
You know it's serious when you get 3 dudes.
Dude, it's so good.
I'm going to take Final Destination 2.
Okay.
Because of the log truck scene, John. That thing, what a great moment. So yeah, I'm going to take Final Destination 2. And
I'm following suit. I'm doing Final Destination 5. Because it was the most feisty fun of those movies.
Oh man, that gymnastics scene. Yikes. Okay.
In the eye surgery.
Oh man.
And the massage parlor. And the dentist. No, the dentist, I'm sorry, that's the wrong movie. But still, so many great scenes.
So I kind of want to take Halloween Ends, but I don't want 2 Halloween movies. So I'm going to take Nose 4 because it's Rennie Harlan. And that's my man.
You know, I jotted it down as I was saying, let's not do part 3. I was like, but maybe for 4.
Oh, I like it. So you have TCM 2, Jason Goes to Hell, Child's Play 2, Poltergeist 2, and Final Destination 5. I have Jason X, Insidious 2, H2O, Final Destination 2, and Nose 4.
Yeah, I was toying with Wes Craven's New Nightmare, but like, in a way, it feels non-sequelish.
Yeah.
It felt like, I feel like if you posted that one, a lot of people would be like, yeah, great choice. And other people would be like, it's kind of a reboot.
Yeah. Oh man, but yeah, it still works though. And it brought meta back, and then that Scream happened. So I guess we can thank that for that.
Just 2 years later, right? Or 1 or 2 years later.
Yeah. Kevin Williamson must have saw it. I'm like, oh, hey, we can be meta. But dude, this was awesome, man. It went a lot longer than I intended, so thanks for sticking with me, because I just enjoyed this discussion, and I'm glad we had it.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I'll talk about Nightmare on Elm Street any day.
All right, well, make sure to follow John at John's Horror Corner on Twitter and Instagram. Check his reviews out at Movies, Films, and Flicks. He's writing more reviews now, which is nice. He doesn't have any work trips coming up on either end here, so we've been getting more reviews coming out. So yeah, check out the reviews. Check out John's Horror Corner on Instagram, John's Horror Corner on Twitter. You can't miss it. Just type in John's Horror Corner. He's everywhere. He's behind you right now. He's in your closet, and he's in your pantry, raiding it, eating your food.
Right, like a gremlin or Michael Myers, wherever I fit best.
Well, this is awesome, man. And we got some fun stuff coming up. We have, let's see, Red Scorpion coming up. We have Backdraft coming up. We have Hellraiser coming up. We have Frailty coming up. We have Deadstream coming up. So yeah, we got some bangers are coming our way, John. All right, so
in for all of it.
Heck yeah. So for me, Mark Hoffmeyer, for John Leavengood, this is Movies, Films, and Flicks. We'll see you next week.